Ayla stared at Seneviere with a burning suspicion. Why on earth would she want to send Talia with them? All that girl ever did was grate on everyone's nerves with her mindless tantrums and petty cruelty. But Seneviere wasn't the type to indulge in meaningless whims, let alone involve the Emperor in them. There was clearly a deeper, more predatory reason for this move. Women of the Imperial bloodline typically undertake the pilgrimage before their marriage, Ayla said, her voice measured but cold. Why send her now? Perhaps Talia will also be wed soon, Seneviere replied, her tone deceptively airy. Ayla's brow furrowed. She hadn't heard a single whisper of any suitors for Talia. Despite her half-sister's messy origins, her name was officially recorded in the Imperial lineage, an engagement would be impossible to keep secret. They were clearly manufacturing a reason to force her onto the trip. While Ayla searched the Empress's face for a crack in her mask, Varkas's voice rang out, cold and sharp as a blade. What a remarkable coincidence. Even in the face of his blatant sarcasm, Seneviere didn't lose an ounce of her composure. 2 joyous occasions for the Imperial family, isn't it wonderful? The proposal only arrived recently, so there has been no official announcement yet, but both I and His Majesty are quite supportive of the union. A contemptuous smirk played at the corners of Varkas's mouth. And who, pray tell, is the lucky gentleman? I'm sure you know the name. The head of House Siorcan, Count Verdian Siorcan. The formal proposal was delivered just a few days ago, Seneviere replied with a small, serene smile. Talia has long since passed her coming-of-age rites. It is high time she was wed, and the match is an eminent one. Ayla had to bite back a bitter, jagged laugh. Verdian Siorcan was one of the Empress's most fanatical supporters. It was an open secret that he had been Seneviere's lover, some whispered he had been her favorite. And now, she was marrying her own daughter off to him? The image of Talia standing beside Count Siorcan flashed through Ayla's mind, and she felt a wave of genuine revulsion. A mother marrying her daughter to a former lover, and a daughter who would undoubtedly obey without a second thought. They were both insane. Since the matter is settled, see that the girl is prepared for the journey immediately. The Emperor's voice was final. He waved a dismissive hand, signaled that the audience was over. Varkas rose, his face a mask of cold neutrality, and began to stride out of the hall. Ayla cast one last wary look at Seneviere before hurrying after him. Are you truly going to take her? She hissed once they were clear of the throne room. This marriage is nothing but a transparent excuse. Seneviere is clearly planning something catastrophic. Perhaps, Varkas replied, his voice flat as he descended the stairs. Ayla stopped in her tracks, stunned by his indifference. She gathered her skirts and rushed to catch up, grabbing his arm. Is that all? You're just going to take her, without even questioning what the Empress is trying to achieve? What would you have me do? He stopped and looked at her, his eyes like chips of ice. Ayla flinched. She realized, with a sudden jolt of fear, that he was at his breaking point. Only an hour ago, he had been smiling at her in the garden. Now, he was a stranger again, distant, cold, and dangerous. Do you want me to rebel against the Emperor's command? He asked, his voice mocking. I just. His Majesty is the ruler of this empire, and I have sworn my life to the Imperial family. I have no choice but to obey. Isn't that exactly what your family has always demanded from people like me? Ayla was paralyzed by the raw bitterness in his voice. He turned his back on her and continued walking, his posture rigid and unyielding. A wave of panic crashed over her. Just as she had so many times when they were children, she ran to him and threw her arms around his waist. I'm sorry. I was afraid, and I took it out on you. Please, don't look at me with such coldness. Varkas remained motionless for a long moment before his body finally began to relax. He let out a soft, weary sigh and turned to pull her into a stiff embrace. He reached out to stroke her hair, the gesture as clinical as it was familiar. "You have nothing to fear, Ayla. No matter what the Empress is plotting, I will see to it that you are safe." She looked up into his face. The stranger had vanished, replaced once more by the loyal, devoted knight. Ayla felt her racing heart begin to slow. This man. He could shatter her with a single look and then piece her back together with a few hollow words. Her pride, her title, her power, all of it meant nothing when she was in his arms. She had spent a decade clinging to these cold embraces, always hoping they might one day hold a spark of real warmth. She looked into his pale blue eyes. What did he see when he looked at her? Those bottomless, vacant eyes always seemed to be focused on something far beyond the horizon. "I swore to the late Empress that I would protect both of you," he said, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I intend to keep that promise, regardless of the cost. You have no reason to worry." Ayla studied his face for a long time before she finally nodded. Yes. As long as he was by their side, they were safe. There was nothing to fear. Absolutely nothing. As Talia filed down her broken nail, she felt a gnawing sense of emptiness. How many more weeks would it take for it to grow back to a length where it could truly pierce the flesh? She stared at the tender pink sliver at the tip of her finger with a cold impatience. The satisfaction of having marked the crown prince's skin had been fleeting. Her precious brother had undoubtedly run straight to the priests to have the scratch healed. And now, she had lost the secret weapon she had spent weeks cultivating. I should have saved it for Ayla. How many times had she fantasized about digging those nails into Ayla's perfect emerald eyes? Talia picked at the jagged skin around the wound. The freshly formed scab tore away, and beads of bright blood welled up. Her irritation flared. She watched the blood pool for a moment before raising her finger to her lips and sucking it away with a sharp, metallic tang. She rose slowly from her seat by the window. There was no point in waiting for another glimpse of Varkas today. There was no sense in pressing her face against the glass, enduring the suffocating heat of the sun. She shuffled across the room, poured cold water into a basin, and splashed it over her sweaty face. At that moment, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Thinking it was the nanny bringing another unwanted snack, Talia reached for a linen towel and called out indifferently, "Come in." But the person who entered wasn't the short, stout woman with the chubby limbs. It was a young boy with a shock of thick, copper-red curls and eyes of a brilliant, piercing green. Dark red curls and bright green eyes entered the room.